So yeah, for the Zoom meetings, the link is on Moodle for the regular ones, but I have a different one for the midterm that I sent out. Well, it was in the class last week, and I'm going to show it again this time. And that's only just because it's a special session where we'll actually be live for longer. I'm not going to record it because obviously it's not available later. That's why I'm doing it as a different one. And the reason is mostly because I want to log in. Like normally I would just say, here's where the midterm is, go download your files, make sure you do the Dropbox. However, in case you have problems, I'll be on the Zoom. Anyone, if you've downloaded the files and you're working, you can log right out of the Zoom meeting, no big deal, but I'll just be there in case someone has an individual problem where they can't actually figure out where the file is or how to download it. I'm going to go through mostly what we're going to talk about today is the midterm and how to do it. I'm sure you guys, some of you might have questions before we even get started, but maybe that would be good. And the link for the midterm will be on Moodle, Becca asked. So what I have now, I'm going to show you Moodle in a minute here to show you where stuff is, but I'm going to put everything on a little bit later on. So first of all, any other questions? I can see the chat box if you put any other questions you might have before we keep moving on. And one other question I want to ask, has anyone done all of chapter 11 just yet?
I've done most of it, but I have a question on that.
Okay, so we can do that after. And it's okay, Becca, if you haven't started it. What I had suggested last class is that if you are working on, you kind of want to learn a little bit more and have more practice, doing chapter 11 does help you practice the software. However, if you feel like you're still, like Sam says, she's stuck on chapter 10, well, then we got to deal with that. So don't even start chapter 11 until after the midterm, because that just might give you more complications that will stress you out, which you don't need before a midterm. So if you are feeling like you understand everything up to chapter 10 and you want to start chapter 11, as I said, it's good just to keep working on source transactions. Those things like the orders, quotes, and deposits won't be on the midterm, so you can focus on those after Wednesday. And any questions, we'll go through the slides, and then you guys can ask questions after we do that. But the focus is to make sure you understand what we're going to do for the midterm on Wednesday. So that's what we're going to be going through. So obviously, you already see the midterm here, which is Wednesday. It starts at 10 a.m., just like regular class time would. And I'm going to give you up till 2 to submit, because it just might take you a long time to work through it and figure stuff out. I doubt it. You should be able to submit by noon. I'm just giving you extra time in case you have technical difficulties. And it really is pretty much the same type of stuff you're doing in the textbook. So, you know, if you were creating purchase invoices, sales invoices, adding shortcuts, changing settings, adding vendors, all the stuff that you've been doing, it's just going to be a review of pretty much everything you've been doing in the chapters up till chapter 10, not chapter 11. So that's kind of what it's going to be like. And what I'm going to do on Moodle is I'm going to add on a sort of a PDF type file for you. So that we'll have, because obviously we don't have the textbook where I say turn to page 365 and start working through these. So you'll have a PDF file that will tell you the things to do, and you will just go one by one into the CAB file that is on Moodle. Now, I'm going to talk a little more about downloading it in a minute. So it'll be basically kind of a work type midterm. So it's not really a test where you have to answer questions. Like the test bank for this course is kind of silly. It has multiple choice questions, which, can you imagine? How do you do this? Here's the multiple choice. Or talk about how you'd fix this. Well, to me, it makes more sense to actually do the stuff you would do in real life to make sure you understand how to do it. And so it won't give you the screenshots like the textbook. It'll just say enter a purchase invoice for this or create a vendor for this, like it did in later chapters for things you had learned in earlier chapters. So that's kind of the way that the exam is structured. So if you haven't already, I'm not sure, this is a picture from Moodle. There's a video that was prepared by the course coordinator that says steps for exam assignment case submission. So have you, Ryan, did you do that already? Yes. Anyone else? If you have not done that, make sure you watch that video. I'm going to give some hints that are in the video right now, just because it's very, very critical. If you don't do the way it says to do it, it will be a problem. And Becca's doing it today. That's perfect. It's really quick. It doesn't take you a long time to watch it at all. Nicole saying she's tried, but she's having issues. So again, I'm not sure why there'd be any issues with watching the videos. You might just need to use a different browser. So whenever that is actually something that's good to talk about. If you are using Microsoft Edge or Explorer or something like that, go into Firefox or Chrome instead. And that's the case for anything you're doing, so not just in this course, but everything. And the steps from the video, I'm going to go through a little bit of it right now, and I'll show you where you can practice before the exam, because that's important. So steps for, so watch the video, and then the things that I wanted to talk about from the video specifically. You should only access Moodle through Citrix, because that's the process for the exam. So basically, you don't have Sage on your computers, right? You access it through Citrix. So when you go into Moodle, you can go into Moodle on your regular computer without Citrix, of course. I do it all the time. Now, if you do that, however, when you start the exam, you might confuse yourself. So don't do it at all. When you first start the exam, open Citrix, then open Moodle that way. Go into Moodle, download your CAB files, and put them in a folder called Midterm in Citrix, just like you did when you downloaded all the student files. So I'm going to stop and make sure everyone understands what I said first before I move on. If you have questions, go ahead and ask. So, and I'm gonna say it in a different way. In Moodle right now, you'll see student data files. Before you even started through the textbook, you had to download a bunch of CAB files. You had to put them in specified folders in a drive. Do you guys remember doing that? And if you don't, you might want to, Becca's saying yes. If you don't, just go back and make sure you know how to do that again. And you can just test it for any of the data files. You could even do it for one of the solutions right now, if you're wanting to practice that. So you can go into the solutions on Moodle for the CAB files, put one in a solution folder in your Citrix data structure, because that's exactly what you're going to do for the midterm. You're going to open up the midterm CAB file that will be saved for you, and I'm going to show you in a minute where that'll be. And then you're going to have that in Citrix in a folder called midterm. So that's clear to everyone. You'll have a folder called midterm. You'll have one CAB file, and you'll have your PDF of what you're supposed to do in that CAB file as well. Then when you're working, just like you normally do from the textbook, you'll look at the PDF. It'll say, I'm just making up a number, something. It'll say, create a new employee, let's say, or create a new whatever. So you're going to create the new employee. Then it might say, do all these transactions for this week. Once you're done all that, it'll tell you at the end what reports you have to print, which you will also save in your folder, just like you always do. If it asks you for a trial balance, a journal entry list, employee list, whatever it asks you for, just like I think you guys, I'm not sure how many of you actually did this, but in the textbook, it tells you a list of all the reports at the very beginning, which I've shown in class as well, where it says, like, for example, if you're looking at your textbook, page 359 says reports, balance sheet, date August 31st, income statement, trial balance, all journal entries, etc. So if the exam told you to print all of those, you will save those as PDF. You've got to make sure that you don't save them in Excel, and that's talked about as well in the video that I've just pointed out. And then you're going to take everything that you have to submit, which is your CAB file, as well as the reports that I've indicated, and you're going to put them into the Dropbox. Now, the problem is if you're accessing Sage through Citrix, but you're in Moodle a different way, you cannot put anything into the Dropbox. Now, that is kind of one of the issues with using Citrix, is if you accidentally forget to open Moodle in Citrix, you won't be able to submit, and you're like, oh my God, where's all the files I just worked on, right? So that's what I'm saying. As soon as you start the midterm, log into Moodle on Citrix, make sure that's all going, you're in Citrix, you download the file right away. We will make sure everybody has downloaded the file in Citrix, and then and once you have it done and you're working, you can just keep going to do that. Okay, so any questions about that process, or does that sound normal? Ryan's saying yes. And I'm going to show you again where to do that as practice right now. So on Moodle, underneath the textbook, so at the very top, you have a whole bunch of stuff, right? You have the Zoom link and all that, and the video I just showed. But at the very bottom under student resources, you see something called a practice Dropbox. Everybody sees that highlighted? So let's say you're afraid you don't know how to do this right now, which maybe you are afraid. I'm scared on the midterm, I'm not going to know how to submit. What I would do after we're done the session here is I'll stay online, and you can go ahead, download whatever tab file you want in Citrix from the solutions. Let's say, it doesn't matter what file it is, I don't care. Anything even that you have in Citrix right now. If you already have a backup you did for chapter 10 or chapter 9, whatever it is, I want you to just take a couple of your files, whatever they are, a tab file, a PDF, everything, and put it in a folder called Practice Submission Ryan. Let's say, Ryan, you're the only one I can see. Practice Submission Ryan. Go put it in that practice Dropbox and make sure it works. And if it works, then you know you're going to do the same thing for the midterm, except you're going to put it into the midterm Dropbox instead of this practice one. Does that help you guys with feeling a little more comfortable about the midterm? I don't know if anyone was uncomfortable about it, but it is a bit of a different process because I don't know, has anyone used Citrix? In the Citrix Moodle, yes, you have to use Citrix Moodle. And that's why I want you to test it now, is like right after we're done all the slides here, I won't talk anymore. I'm going to let you guys all try to do this. You're going to go into Moodle in Citrix, right? And then you're going to pick whatever files you want. Just put them, copy them. Don't delete them in case you want to still have them. Just copy a couple of your reports, one tab file, put it in a file called practice midterm submission kind of thing, and then put it in the practice Dropbox. And then I'll make sure that it's in there for you and you'll know how to do it. So we're going to do that at the very end. And so everything has to be in Citrix. So if you're already in Moodle right now following along with the slide, you need to exit out of Moodle, log into Citrix, open Moodle through Citrix. So this is the link now, again, to the midterm session in Zoom, which is for Wednesday. And now I'm going to, as soon as we're done this, I'm going to open up Moodle just to show you where everything is. Next week, finish chapter 11 if it's not complete. And of course, chapter 12 will be what we cover on Monday as well. So that's the end of the slide. So now I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to open up Moodle and share that. So just give me a moment here. I'm in Moodle, but I just got to make sure I share the right screen because it always is a specific screen I have to share at one time. Okay, can you guys see Moodle now? Yeah, perfect. So again, when you log into Moodle, make sure you don't go through your web browser, go through Citrix, hit the app for Moodle, and you'll see this screen here. So you can see the videos that we talked about. If you forgot how to create a folder in Citrix, which you're going to create for the midterm, because you can actually set that up right now. Today, you can go ahead and create your midterm folder in Citrix today, just so it's ready. And then when the files are available, you would have the folder there to download the file into. And if you forget how to download, you can rewatch this video. So all the videos, you're going to do exactly the same thing that you did before. Now, where the midterm is saved is going to be down here. You can see I've already set up a Dropbox. You can't maybe see it on your Moodle just yet because I have made it available from June 29th at 10 a.m., which is when these exams start. I didn't want people, when you're practicing right now, to accidentally put wrong files in here. I want you to make sure that you go down here and use this practice Dropbox. That's why this, do you guys see this where this right now? Is anyone in, are you guys in Moodle right now? Can you see this midterm exam here? You can? You probably just can't get into it to do anything. Good. So that's where everything will be. So right now there's only a Dropbox, but you will also see files to download. So the midterm, I will be putting that in there where you'll have the PDF of what you need to complete, and you'll have a tab file that you start with. I'm not going to make you create a brand new file because, well, if you remember chapter 7, you might remember that it took many, many hours to do, so a lot longer than an exam. So you'll have a file for an existing company, and you'll be doing transactions just like you do in the textbook. You just won't have the instructions on how to do them. So that is where all of the midterm will be. And that Zoom link that I just put in the slide, I'll add that right below this too, because we have the Zoom links here, but that's the regular one for the class. So in this one here, I'll put the one specifically for the midterm, because again, I'm not going to do a recording for it because it doesn't apply for anything afterwards, because you're doing the midterm. So everyone right now, we have, how many people are in this? I'm going to see if I can see how many people. We have 11 people, but we have 22 in the class. So I'm pretty sure the people not in the class right now, hopefully will be watching. I do see there's a lot of views on the recorded session. So I think people like the flexibility of maybe you're busy during the day and you want to go watch it later in the evening. Now, if you guys want to now, there's nothing else I really wanted to show for today other than this is where the midterm files will be. And what I want you guys to all do now is go into Citrix, open up Moodle, download. I want you to do all the steps as if it was the midterm. So of course we don't have the midterm file right here, right? We don't. But what you could do, just to make sure you know how to do, is you could go down into the student data files, PDF and CAB solutions, and you could just go into here, for example, and just pick, it doesn't even matter. Just pick something, make sure you know how to put this in a folder again in Citrix, and then that you know how to take it out and put it back into this practice Dropbox. So I think that's just good practice. And I'm going to let you all do it individually because you've done it already. And if you need to go and look at some of the videos again, just to remind yourself how to create the folder for the midterm, how to download the file, how to submit it, you can watch those videos as well. But basically what you're doing is if you're in Citrix, you're going to download a file, doesn't matter which one. You're going to make sure you know how to put it into Citrix in your, maybe just call it a practice folder, like I said, and then your practice folder that you have in Citrix with a CAB file, put a couple of reports, as I mentioned, come back in Citrix, put it in this practice Dropbox. As soon as you're done that and you have stuff in there, you just put it in the chat that you're done, and I'll check and make sure I can see it. And that way I know that, I mean, it'll be the same process in the midterm. You won't have to confirm because you know how to do it and I can see it and everything's good. And that way, you know that once you put your midterm in the midterm Dropbox, that I will be able to see it. So if anyone have any questions before you start doing that? So the files will be in the Citrix Moodle named Midterm. Well, so one thing I wanted to clarify is that the Citrix Moodle is exactly the regular Moodle. It's just you're accessing it through Citrix. So yes, it will be named Midterm. So right here we have the Midterm Dropbox. I am going to create, see how we have the folder for in-class for meetings and recordings? I'm going to add a folder here called Midterm where everything will be. And when you're in Citrix, you'll be able to download the files that you need and put them in your file called Midterm that you create in Citrix, which you can do right now. So you can create your file called Midterm. Ryan already has one in there in the practice folder. Good job. So then as soon as you have put something in the practice folder in Citrix with a CAB file and some reports, just so you're familiar with putting multiple file types, take that and then do the way you normally do and try to use the Dropbox. And I'm going to mute myself. And Ryan might be the first one that finishes this, and then we'll make sure it works. And if you're okay, Ryan, if it does work, do we put the midterm file under other? Yeah, you could put the midterm folder under other, or you could just create a main folder called midterm. I won't see what you create in Citrix anyway. This is whatever is easiest for yourself to do for yourself so you could see it. So if you just create a main folder called midterm, or is there, didn't you create a file called exams? No?
We only created, if you follow the video, you create one called, I think, for marks.
For marks, yes.
I can't remember what the second one is.
That's what it's called. I forgot what it was called too. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, A for marks, B for whatever, and then C for other.
Yeah, and then so I would do it under 4 marks, and that would be the intent of the way you set up the folder. So under 4 marks, create a folder called midterm, and then when you get the midterm files, you can save them in there. The reason that's important is just because when you do backups and whatnot, and you save your CAB file, if you forget where you saved it, it can be really stressful, especially in an exam. So that's why I'm saying go ahead and create your midterm folder right now under 4 marks. But also right now for marks, you could also do practice under there. If you want, doesn't matter where you put it. The point is you need to be able to save a CAB file with your work in it. so that you make sure you're submitting the right one. What I've had happen in other courses for Sage is some students, you download the file like you're going to do right now. Let's say you download chapter 9, just as an example, and you download that into your Citrix and you have it, and you do a bunch of work, but you save a backup for that and you put it somewhere different, and then you submit the one where you did no work. So that's where it's very risky that you're going to submit the wrong file. So what you need to make sure is when you download the midterm file and then you do a backup, let's say at the end of all your transactions, you put it in that 4 marks midterm folder, and that's the one that you're submitting, right? Make sense? And of course, you'll have all the reports that you need to print to PDF. So if you guys want to try, like I said, even opening, I mean, I said just take any folder, drag some reports, make sure you can do the practice Dropbox. If people want to do a little bit more than that, you can always open up one of the tabs, make sure you know how to print reports to PDF if you need to review that, and then download that in the practice Dropbox. That's a little bit more practice. But other than that, I'll let you guys work.
Hey, Linda, so I was actually having,
Go ahead.
I was actually having a problem. I guess I misunderstood when the textbook says like, you know, print this report. I was just opening them and obviously I wasn't printing them, but I didn't realize it kind of made it sound today like you had wanted us to save them in that folder for that chapter, which I wasn't doing. So I did try yesterday to convert them to PDF. As per the video that was posted on Moodle.
Yep.
My understanding is that we can't keep them as Excel. I understand that.
That's right.
But I was having a problem actually saving them. I was able to convert them to PDF, but then when I would try to save them in the folder for that chapter, at first I kept getting an error message saying you don't have permission or authorization to save to this location or whatever. And then I closed out, tried to do it again, and then I would save it to that chapter, but then when I would go back in, nothing would be there. So I am pretty concerned about that. I don't know if I'm like missing a step or something, but yeah.
Has anyone else, and maybe you could share your screen afterwards. I want to see, Ryan, have you done it and it's been successful for you by saving a PDF in that folder in Citrix? Or has anyone?
I have. When you when you create a report and all that, there's the I can't remember what it's called. I know I could find it if I was doing it, but when you create the reports, I think there's an option where you can save it as a PDF as opposed to printing it, rather than just like when you print normally, it's just in a different location.
Right. So there's two different, yeah, that's right. And I always have this problem myself. So I'll wait. Lauren says he's submitted, so I'll check that in a minute. But for the report, there are 2 ways to do it in Sage. And I find this the same for everything I'm doing actually, is when I want, like, let's say I don't want to manually print something, but I want it to be PDF so I can send it to somebody. Your exam would be a good example. Like I have a Word file and I don't want to put it in Word because you guys might accidentally type something different. So I want to save that as PDF. And there's 2 ways I can do that. I can go File, Save As, and change the document type to PDF. Now that's one way to do it. So you can see if that works by putting it in the same folder. The other way to do it is to go File, Print, and where the printer is, like there's a printer that'll say, like mine is called a Canon whatever. I just click that and I choose PDF instead, and that works. But one may work better than the other. And I remember the textbook did have a note in how it told you to do it, or maybe the video tells you. I did watch it, but I already forgot what it said. Did it tell you to print as PDF or save as PDF?
Would that be, sorry, that's the video for how to submit stuff for marks?
That's right.
No, she just said save it as a PDF.
Okay, so that might be what you should try. So try both ways right now and see which one works. And just know that there's those 2 options. So if you had a problem saving a report, just go into CAB right now. It doesn't even matter which chapter you're in. Just go into one of your Sage files in Citrix, print a report, or like open a report, I mean, and then go save as PDF and see if that'll save it in the folder. Because that might be the only problem, is you're trying to print to PDF. And if NAIT has some weird printer setting that's not set up properly, that would be why you don't have permission. But if you go save as PDF, that might fix your issue.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was trying. Yeah.
It's under the like when you go to a report, they have that bar at the top. It says print preview, change print settings, and export. If you go to export, then you can export it as a PDF.
And that
Okay.
allows you to save it into your folder, Ryan, in Citrix?
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. So that's important then. So go export to PDF. Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, so you'll be online for a little bit. Like, I just want to make sure that this
Oh
works.
yeah, no, I'm gonna
Okay.
stay online until
Okay,
everybody
thanks.
else is off. So Lauren
Okay.
submitted, so I'm gonna check his, and once I check
Okay.
his and it's there, he can log off. And until all of you guys are gone and you make sure you understand how to submit a report as well as the CAB file into the practice Dropbox under one folder. Don't submit a whole bunch of different things in there. Have your name with everything underneath it, a CAB and at least one Sage file and one report, so that we know that
Okay.
that works. And once I say, yes, you have it, then you can, log off, and then we'll know that everybody's happy.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I had a question about chapter 11.
Yeah, let me just check the people that have submitted so far, and then we'll get into chapter 11. So I'm just checking Lauren is the only one who messaged so far. Oh, I have to see all the students. That's interesting. It's showing me it would be nice if this was alphabetical order, but it's by your student ID. So Lauren, that's why you're not even on the first page. So I have to scroll through some pages. So give me a moment here. Oh, Ryan, I see you've submitted, and I see you submitted the skeleton CAB. You didn't submit a report with it, hey?
No, I didn't. Actually, I just realized something with that is the CAD file is just like the that's just the blank file, because what we actually have is that would be the Sage data file that we'd want to submit, right?
Yeah, you want to submit the actual file that you did the work on. So what you could do when you save it at the end, if you just want to be sure, like let's say you're totally done, in your form marks, you might have like skeleton is the one Ryan just uploaded for everyone's sake. So that could have been the one you downloaded right from Moodle, right? And you didn't do any work on it. If you submitted that to me and it didn't have any of your work, you're going to not get any marks. So what you could do is, as soon as you're finished, you could go create a backup and you could call it, midterm completed. And then you're submitting the right one with your name. Put your name in it too. Make sure you say Ryan, your full name, and midterm completed, something like that. And then when you submit it, you'll know you're submitting the right one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember you were talking about that. Yeah, because if you submit just the Sage data file, then you won't have all the information behind it. I guess it won't.
Exactly. The data file won't have all your work. It'll just be what you upload, what you downloaded from Moodle to work on, because you have, well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. It depends. I mean, if you, like some students, open it up, and then just Sage saves automatically as you're doing work. So if that is the one, it's just people often do a backup and then they go into the wrong one. I don't really know what happened. But for example, okay, so I looked at Ryan's, I should be looking at Lauren. So Lauren, I see you submitted Northern 1 CAB, and I can see that. So if you want to just, one other good thing to do right now is I did get that report or that file, but if you want to see, can you add a report now? Like let's say you submitted and you forgot to add a report. Or can you put a CAB and a report in one folder and submit the whole folder? Can you change what you like? So say you just submitted Northern, Ryan, you just submitted skeleton. See if you could add a report now, because then you could do it like piecemeal if you forgot one thing. Good to test that out. And Lauren, so yeah, Lauren, if you want to try a report, go ahead. And Becca says she's going to try after because she has an appointment and she'll watch the recording later. If any of you don't have time to test all this out now, at 10 o'clock, because you have till 2, that's why I left a bit of time in case you're having technical difficulties, but you can send me an email. My email is now working properly. NAIT had changed my email this year, and IT finally got back to me 3 days ago telling me how to set it up on my phone because they totally changed my email. So now I will be able to get it. So let's say, Becca, you have problems and you can't figure it out, then before class on at 10, I can get on a bit early and make sure that you know how to do it if you have a challenge. Just like Ryan just said, oh, I did this wrong, or whatever it is. I mean, if you guys all try it and it works, it should all be fine. And at 10, everyone just, I show you where it is just to make sure, especially because some of the students not here today might have missed this and not watched it, and then they'll have the same issues. All of you here now, if you can do the report and the CAB file, you know you're good. So make sure that it's called .cab. That would be your file. Make sure it's named with your name and midterm so that I know that it's the right file when you're doing it for the midterm, right? Anyone else finished? Because like I said, I can see, I'm gonna refresh too to see if anything changes for you guys once you submit.
Linda.
Oh, I see Lauren has a folder now.
Hey, Linda.
Yep.
Hey, sorry. So I was able to save a report. But sorry, I don't know why I'm getting so confused here, but so I was able to save a report to the midterm folder that I just created.
Yep.
Under A for marks. And I also am very confident with how to take stuff from Moodle and put it into these folders or whatever. Like I know how to do the save as and all that stuff. But how do we get everything into one folder to convert to a CAB file? Because like we have to have all of our PDF.
No, you can't convert it all to one CAB folder. CAB is .cab.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like it's a cabinet. That's what Sage, the Sage extension is. So your .cab is only your Sage file. If you created a folder called midterm, under midterm for submission, you should just have one .cab file, which is your work that you did in Sage. Then you'll have a trial balance, income statement, whatever you're asked to do.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay. And then, okay, so there could be like 5 separate things, and then we just take all those and then put them in the Dropbox.
Exactly.
It's not going to just be one tidy little folder. Okay.
Do you guys want me to show you what Lauren's submission looks like?
I would like that if he's comfortable with it. That would be
Lauren,
great.
are you okay? It doesn't show any personal information at all. So it just shows what it looks like on my end so you can see. And I'll show you the difference just so you guys can kind of see. Can you guys see the Moodle?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so here's Lauren. And so here he just created, see, he says new folder. So let's presume that it was called midterm. And then he would have a, midterm, whatever it is, midterm.cab. And then he'd have a couple of reports under here as well, which would be PDFs. And then if you look here, this is the one that, this is where, so Daylin is the one that, this is the problem I have. If you put one called Northern and one called Backup, it's really confusing because I need one .cab for the midterm, and then I need a bunch of reports. But if you had what I had in past semesters, it's okay for this because this is just practice. But what I had in past courses is people would submit a whole bunch of backup files, and I wouldn't know which one was their final one to go in for marks. So make sure that in your submission, you only have one .cab and then a whole bunch of PDFs. And they could be under a folder like this, like Lauren has, where he has one CAB file, which would be his completed midterm, and then a bunch of PDFs of whatever you're asked for. Let's see, Ryan here has one, not under a folder, but again, it doesn't really matter. The thing is, as long as you have all the stuff submitted in the Dropbox, like it says Ryan submitted for grading, it says this is submitted, and so on. And it looks like you can add things after, so that's good. If you accidentally just put one CAB, then obviously you can go add the other report afterwards. The reason I say to put it in one folder before you submit anything is then you make sure that you know that it is all, that you didn't miss anything. And I'm going to refresh because Ryan says he submitted again. So let me go refresh. So yeah, so this is perfect. Thank you, Ryan. So I'm going to use Ryan's as an example. You can see he has a CAB file, which would have been his midterm with all his work. And then he has 2 different reports. And that's exactly what you'd have, but it would maybe have more than, it would have whatever reports you're asked to do. Trying to watch if anyone else is done so that I can, and Ryan just added the backup file. That's the one. Perfect. Yeah, because when you did the backup after you're done, you just call it your name, and in this case, it'd be midterm, right? But yeah, that's perfect.
found it's easier to change the name of it after you save it all, because if you change it, then when you save it, it's either going to update the new save one, or you're going to be creating like 10 different backup files.
Exactly. So just keep working. Don't change it till the very end, and then you call it, whatever the name is with your name and midterm complete, and then that's the one you're uploading. Okay, well, I'll watch the chat in case other people have questions, and if you're done and you're happy, you can definitely log out. I appreciate you being here, Ryan, to help everyone, because you're kind of the one that's always in the camera, so I can see you. People are too shy, right?
Before we go today, can I ask something about chapter 11 once we're done?
Actually, you could do it now. I think I don't have anyone else asking me to check, so go right ahead.
Okay, it's a pretty specific thing. It's when I was going through, doing the what's it called? The daily bank manager or whatever, the DBM, nearing the end of the chapter, because it has all your like reoccurring things and like upcoming stuff. In the file, it has like, okay, there's like 4 different suppliers, and then this is the upcoming payments or something like that.
Depending supplier purchase orders?
I not purchase orders, it's the reoccurring, sorry.
Oh, reoccurring entries.
Pardon me?
The reoccurring? I'm trying to see.
Yeah, the reoccurring when you store an
posting
entry.
Directly from the daily business manager, yes.
That's it, daily business managers. Yeah, so then it has reoccurring. The reoccurring tab has like 4 different companies on it.
Right.
Because those are the ones that you stored throughout the chapter.
Right.
So 2 of them in the book say other payment, and the other ones say invoice and orders or whatever.
Got it.
I'm just wondering what the other, where would you get the other payment from? Because all of mine said either mine said statement or invoice.
Yes, I'll show you that in, let's see if I can get into Sage. Oh, where is it? Okay, I gotta share my Sage. And Lauren's saying his is good, so I'm just going to check that, and then I'll go back to the question, Ryan, because there's a few different types of things, and
you can even just get back to me later on it. I
just think it might help other people too, because it is kind of an interesting thing. So this will just take me 1 second to make sure. Yep, I have Lauren, so Lauren's is done, so we're good now. Okay, now I'm going to see if I have Sage open, which I do. Okay, and I'm going to share that screen. There we go, share. Okay, you can see Sage?
Yeah.
Okay, so in here, we do most things through invoices, because most things are payable, right? Like you get an invoice from a vendor and then you pay it. So if I had a customer where I sold goods, I would go into sales invoices here. And if I entered something that's monthly, I could save it as a recurring right here, and it'll be in my daily business manager as a recurring entry, right, for an invoice, like you said. Same thing under vendors and purchases. If I went in here and did a purchase invoice, I could save that as a recurring. But the other thing that we can do is we can do what's called an other payment, and sometimes so there's paying other people, and those are the ones that they're talking about there. So it's paying other expenses, and I don't ever do that. I always go into purchase invoice myself, but I remember the textbook had one. I'm just trying to see where you get into it again, because this is, oh, here it is. Pay purchase invoices right here. And pay, and then there's pay credit card bills, pay expenses. So this is the one that they're talking about, pay expenses. So if you go into here and go pay expenses, it's a totally different thing that we didn't do in this chapter. So if I wanted to pay someone, I'm just in, this is a bad example because I'm in a company that has no vendors. But basically here, I'd enter everything, and I could enter this as a recurring, And that would be what it would be as an other expense. So you can see here, payments, other expenses. So it's basically you do, and you also use this for paying remittances also, like that under this payment button. So normally we set up a purchase invoice and then we pay the purchase invoice. That's what we normally do, because we get an invoice in advance. It's due in 30 days or 10 days with a discount, whatever it is, and we just pay that. But some things it's a one-off thing. We just go into pay expenses. It's an other payment. You can see here it says make other payments.
Oh, okay.
And
So
there
basically what you're
entering the
doing is
account.
you're creating an invoice and paying it all at the same time in a different area type thing.
Absolutely. So this would be, to give an example of when you might do this. Let's say you had, you know, you have a store and someone comes in and sells you something on the spot that you have to pay cash for. You could do this as make other payments.
Okay, yeah, because before they were just getting you to go through the purchase invoice and just changing
it to cash.
The pay later to a check or whatever, and then add it, and then it would just post as paid, and then you wouldn't have to go and pay the
exactly. And
it's not
in real life, I do that for everything. Like for all my stage stuff that I do in real life, I do purchase invoice and I just set it up to cash, because usually most of my stuff is through direct payments in the banking system. So I do purchase invoice and do that. You could do it this way, where you literally set up make other payment. You put in your GL account here. You would just pick whatever the GL is. You pick the description, the amount, the tax. You save this as a recurring, and it basically is just telling you that it's a payment. And now I don't know why. There's no reason one's better than the other. It does the exact same thing in your journal entry.
It just sounds like another. Sorry.
Yeah, the only like if you're paying cash, setting it up as a purchase invoice. I guess maybe you could argue technically if you had an account set up with the vendor where you're paying later, the account would be what you'd use the purchase invoice for, whereas, you know, something other you would put in here. That would be probably the best practice, I would guess.
Yeah, I just, I don't know why they did that then in this chapter, because like what it was referring to was the rent and like the monthly rent. And I believe on the monthly rent, they actually give you an invoice number. So,
and you can put an invoice number in here. See, there is an invoice number here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could, that's what I'm saying. If you, in an exam, let's say you created monthly rent as a recurring transaction under the make other payment or under the purchase invoice, your trial balance, your income statement, everything will be exactly the same. So I don't care if you did it, because you did it, like you said, you did it as a purchase invoice. So your daily business manager doesn't agree. So that's a good thing to be in the recording for other students, because people because if you're not used to paying other expenses like this in this manner, then your recurring won't match.
Okay, so they're just confusing us for the sake of confusing us.
Yeah, well, or they should have told you to, when you were paying this, to pay other expense, so that
and there might have been a note on that in the columns or something like that. It's just, you know, when things are so repetitive all the time, a lot of times I just skip over that stuff. So
exactly, yeah. And so and like I said, I don't really care if you, as long as you set it up as recurring, because the thing about recurring payments that's really good is that it helps you be more efficient, right? So if you had things that were weekly, whether it's a pay expense or whether it's, you know, a purchase invoice, obviously it saves a lot of time.
Well, and also I found that in the daily business manager, that's a good feature to check if you set up your recurring payments and all that correctly, because one of them I added in as a reoccurring payment and it didn't post properly. So I ended up adjusting the journal entry so that it, like I reversed it and then redid it, and then it posted properly, and the daily business manager showed it posted properly. So that was a good checker to see if you were actually doing it right.
Yeah, and one thing you could do, like let's say you, like I've done this lots of times. Let's say I have a new vendor, right? And I forget to set it up as recurring, like you just said you did, right? Like you actually posted it, it's posted completely correctly, but all you did is forget to do it as recurring. What I often do is I actually just go in, I use the pen to find that entry, and then I just go save as recurring, and then I close it. So you don't actually have to reverse it. If you're not making any changes other than making it recurring, you could actually just open up the one you posted, go store as recurring, and then close it, and it'll say, do you want to discard? And you say yes, and that way you didn't have to reverse it and redo it.
Well, that's how I tried doing it the first time, but it was set up incorrectly for some reason, and I couldn't figure out why. So I tried.
So there was something
doing
else wrong with it as well.
I tried to fix it, edit it, but
Yep.
it wouldn't let me change it because it told me that there was already a reoccurring entry for that. So I had to, I actually had one of them, I actually had to delete the reoccurring entry and then just redo a reoccurring entry,
Right.
and that fixed it. And one of them, I actually had to reverse it and then repost it
Right.
and do that.
And one thing I do with recurring, let's say I set it up and something was incorrect and it says you can't change this recurring, because I get that a lot too. I'll just change the name of it very slightly. I'll go, like, let's say it was TELUS monthly expenses that I had a recurring for already, and now I edit it and it says, oh, you already have one, you can't resave it. I might just go TELUS monthly updated, then I go into my recurring, delete the other one so that I don't get messed up, and then I can take, then I have TELUS expenses updated. That's what I do in real life, right? So instead of having to reverse and repost, I try to, again, it doesn't matter. As long as you get it right in the end, it doesn't matter how you do it, but to save time, if you just change the name a little tiny bit, it can work that way too.
Okay, because then, because Sage usually, if you do an update like that, then it won't, because it'll just take everything from that point on rather than changing everything in the past, I guess. If you have something that's been reoccurring for like, a couple of years or something like that, I would assume.
Right. If you change a recurring entry, a recurring entry is just changing the entries going forward. It's not changing any of your prior ones. So if you had accidentally forgot to put the right tax code in for an entry that was recurring, you'd have to go back and change every single entry. But in real life, like, let's say you had been posting something for an entire year wrong and you realize, oh shoot, it was to the wrong account. Rather than going in and changing 12, a lot of people in real life, I'm not talking for an exam or in the course, but what you might just do is do a reclass entry where they're like, okay, well, I can see I posted this. Maybe I should have broken the expense into two categories. I put it into one. I can do an adjusting journal entry just to move the whole year out of one into another, right? Or the whole month, depending. If people are using monthly reports, they want to fix things monthly, of course. But if they're just doing everything for tax purposes, they might just make one journal entry at the end of the year to correct it. And again, even in the case of your trial balance and your statements, everything will still balance, whether you fixed each one individually or you did one adjusting journal entry at the end.
Okay.
And I see
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. And Nicole, yours is working fine. I see a backup. I see a PDF and a Sage file, so you're good.
Hey, Linda, sorry, I just have another question because I just reviewed the video as you were talking to Ryan, and I'm just getting really tripped up because the video is kind of saying to do something different. The lady in the video says that we have to click the folder that has everything in it that we want to submit, and then we have to compress it. We have to click compress. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the reason you're supposed to do that is just because it might be too big to submit otherwise. So if you 7-zip it, it is better. In this case for this, you didn't need to do it because it's literally one and it worked. But if you had a ton of stuff and it's a really big file, compressing it is going to save you time and also make it easier for me to download. So if you can put it in one folder, like when I said put midterm, and then you just upload the folder, that is the way to do it. And compress it first because it makes it small enough.
okay, so I would save my reports to the midterm folder, which I did, and I would save the backup of the CAB file that I was working on.
Yep. Yeah, and then you would just
I would
zip that whole midterm folder. So yeah, you could try that now too. That's a good point. Because this is so small and it's like a couple things you're just testing, I didn't mention to do that. But if you have really big stuff, there is a limit to how much you could submit on Moodle. It's an internal thing, just like when you email things and there's limited. So 7-zip is something you should have on your computer, and all you do is right click and you say zip, and it should work. So yeah, go ahead and test that as well.
Okay, so what I would have in that folder then is I would have obviously my reports, and then I would have the backup that I had saved with all my work, and then I would have the original CAB file, I guess. So
but
then
the original CAB file you don't want to submit, so that wouldn't be something you need to submit. So you would.
So I can just delete that from the folder then?
Well, I wouldn't delete it until everything's submitted. Just keep it in a different folder for yourself. Because what if I came back to you and said you added the wrong one? Because maybe That's very rarely ever happened. As long as you're very clear, you have it as the downloaded midterm. So you can even have two folders for marks. You could have downloaded midterm file, and then you have your midterm for submission, and you put your backup in the midterm for submission, and your other one is just in your regular one.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So did you want me to try that then? Because I'm pretty sure I know how to do that, but did you want me to try it just to make sure everything's okay? Okay.
Doesn't
Okay.
hurt. And then you can just, and see if you can delete what you already submitted. I haven't, because I can't submit stuff. That's why I'm getting you guys to try it. And I'm showing you what it looks like for me, because I'm not a student. I can't submit anything to show you how it looks. Otherwise I would be
Okay.
demoing this for you.
Yeah, so I just clicked remove submission. Are you sure you want to remove? Yes. So it should be gone now.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll do the 7-zip thing. So just
Yeah,
give me a
and
minute
see
here.
if that works.
Sure.
And if anyone else is still working on it, go ahead and try the 7-zip and make sure that works as well. And I'll just wait for other people so I can check.
When I move the original file to a different folder, so I don't submit that one as well. So I use the fields one. I don't know what chapter that is, like maybe chapter 8 or something, or chapter 4, I don't know. So right now in my midterm folder, I have fields 1, and it's a folder that actually has like the Sage in it. Yeah, fields SAI. And then I have my report, I have backup cab, and then I have fields cab. So which ones would I be moving to a different folder that I don't want to submit? Do I want to move the folder that has the actual like fields SAI, or do I have to leave that with the backup?
Yeah, you don't want to submit that. The only thing you want to submit is the
Yeah.
backup that you did, right?
Okay.
And the
Okay.
report.
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying when you do the backup, when you're finished, call it midterm completed with your name, so that then you know that's the one you're submitting. And it should say .cab at the end. So you should
Okay.
only be submitting a CAB under your folder that's zipped. You should have a CAB file and then your reports.
Okay, I wasn't sure if the SAI thing needed to stay with the backup. Like I didn't know if they like talked to each other and they needed to be like paired or whatever, but okay. I'm just compressing that now and then I'll put it back in my Dropbox.
Awesome. Yeah, and then I'll check it and make sure that one works. There's only
Linda.
a few people. Yep, Lauren.
The question that Ryan had brought up earlier about the paying expenses,
Yep.
is the difference because in paying expenses, you can't take advantage of the early payment? Would that be the difference?
That is one thing, because you don't have an account set up with the vendor. So that is a good point of where you couldn't use pay expenses.
Yeah. So when you set up the invoice and then pay invoice, you can get back that that allowance. But when you pay expenses, I don't think you can do it that way.
No, you can't. So yeah, in the pay expenses, it's for things like I think I had said originally, it's like someone comes into the store and you're paying cash for a one-off type thing, or rent, because there's not a lot of settings. But for something like rent, I still probably would have set it up as a purchase invoice, because I could then specify the rent expense in my supplier setup and everything. And so again, it's some you could do either way, but some you have to do in the invoice, like the early payments. That's a good point to bring up.
Makes sense. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, it should be good now.
Okay, let me just refresh here. I always have to refresh to make sure it works. Oh yeah, now I see midterm zip under your submission. And when I go to download it, it's a zipped folder, and that makes it easier. And oh, by the way, one other thing though, in your folder, make sure it says midterm in your name. And I'm going to bring that up again to everyone, because as I download your folder where everything's in it, if you guys all just call it midterm, I won't know whose it is.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
But yeah, it works. I'm in your midterm right now, and I see a cab and a balance, which is perfect.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm going to stop the recording now, because I think nobody has any other questions about chapter 11 that's on the call that I should record. Okay, Hearing none, so I'm going to stop recording, and then I'll stay online until you guys are all happy with your sessions that they're working.